Hello everyone and welcome to the very lovely looking Alfa Romeo Giulia Veloce. It's the kind of car you buy if you need a mid-sized executive saloon but fancy going against the norm and not buying a BMW, Audi or Mercedes-Benz.
There's very little wrong with the 3 Series, A4 Saloon and C-Class. So that means the Alfa Romeo Giulia can't just rely on its good looks and Italian charm to win over customers. It's got to drive well, come packed with technology and be spacious enough for those times when you do actually use all of the seats and luggage area.
So, does the Giulia have the substance to back up its style? And should you spend your hard-earned cash on one? I'm Hope Ellen and this is another Parker's Cars review.
Before I get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn your notifications on so you get a reminder every time we publish a new video. At the time of filming, the Alfa Romeo Giulia is available with 3 engines, all of which are petrol, ranging from the 200 horsepower 2-litre 4-cylinder to the incredible 2.9-litre V6, fitted to the Quadrifoglio performance version.
Climb into the Giulia and the first thing you'll notice is a cabin that's logically laid out and punctuated by some attractive design touches. Yes, it probably will feel dated compared to new arrivals. This car came out in 2016, but it's still got plenty going for it. For starters, the driving position is excellent. There's lots of adjustment, but regardless of how you like to sit, you should feel at home behind the steering wheel with great visibility all around. You'll also notice physical dials for the speedometer and rev counter in this car, something you barely ever see anymore on cars at this price point, which, by the way, is around £46,000 for this Veloce spec model. Maybe it's a personal thing, but I really like the dials, as not only are they nice and clear, but they also give this instrument cluster a distinct look that you simply don't get if there's just a screen there. Don't panic though, if you'd much rather see a digital readout, there is a screen between the 2 dials. However, it doesn't have anything like the amount of functionality you'd get on rival systems, like Audi's virtual cockpit, for example. I do like the steering wheel. It has a nice shape, plus the buttons are easy to use without looking, and check out these metal gear shift paddles. These are way better quality than you get in most cars at any price point. Move to the centre console and you'll note that post-facelift cars have a much nicer finish on the gear lever and an updated infotainment system. Displayed on this 8.8-inch touchscreen, which can also be controlled using this rotary dial, it's by no means the best infotainment system in the market. It can sometimes be laggy, the graphics aren't massively attractive, and rivals have more functionality, but it does do the basics fairly well. However, I am pleased to see that while you can change the temperature on the touchscreen, you've also got these proper physical chunky dials right here. Lovely.
Interior quality in the Giulia is much better than you might expect. Most of the materials feel nice to the touch, while even after 12,000 miles, this car still feels very solid with no annoying squeaks or rattles. If you want to know more about this car and what it's like to use every day, then check out our video diary series with the Giulia Veloce.
As for storage space, it's about average. The door pockets could be a bit bigger, as could the space under the armrest. But there's a hidden compartment here, plus 2 usable cup holders and another space forward of that.
The Giulia is available with a straightforward selection of trim levels, including Sprint, Veloce, Estrema and Quadrifoglio. All models come as standard with adaptive cruise control, wireless phone charging, keyless entry and front and rear parking sensors with a rear view camera.
Climb into the back of the Giulia and practicality is surprisingly good considering this car's sleek looks from the outside. There's a decent amount of head and legroom for average size adults, and you could get a middle seat passenger in for short journeys. I say short journeys because there is this central tunnel for them to contend with. It is a bit disappointing, however, that there's no separate climate control zone back here or even any USB points.
Boot space is 480 litres, with the rear seats in place, which measures up well compared with the BMW 3 Series and Audi A4. It's not the most practical shape if you want to get awkward shaped items in, but then that's normal on saloon cars. Handily though, the rear seats fold down in a 40-20-40 split as standard, which does create extra flexibility when you fold them down.
It's time now to see how user-friendly the Giulia Veloce really is. And we're going to do that with a quick usability test. It's called Hope's Car Olympics. Now against the clock, I've got to fold down the rear seats so they're flat, tune in the radio to Absolute FM and set the sat-nav to take me to Buckingham Palace. Let's go! Right, so I've got a sneaky suspicion that I've got to start in the boot. Oh, is it going to open? It's going well so far. Hey, there we go. I was pressing the wrong one. Right, we've got these two levers here. Give them a pull. Come round. So that has actually like unlocked them, but I've actually got to pull them down myself. Start with this one. Two down there. Another one here. That's complete. Jump in the front. Jump in the front. Oh, very windy day today. Right, so navigation. Nice and straightforward. First thing on there. Search would be, God, I have no idea. How do I search? Continue browsing. No, I don't want to browse, I want to get to a point. Get me to a point. Navigate to this point. Here we go. So then you can go to here. No? This is confusing. This is really confusing. I don't know how to actually enter a place in. Am I just being a donut? Start navigation. Well, no, it's just... There we go, there we go, there we go. I couldn't tell you how I got onto there. It was just a bit of pressing around and a bit of guessing. Buckingham Palace. You can see it's a bit laggy, as mentioned earlier, but it's not doing a bad job. Press it on there. It's loading. It's giving me different route alternatives, which is good. Start navigation, so that's happening. Then we're going to go home. The last piece of the puzzle, go onto radio. There's a list along here of favourites. That, I imagine, is the full list. Yes. Absolute radio. Boom! Here's the proof.
Like spending a day self-caring.
Oh, it's a cheeky advert. So there we go then, we've just seen how the Alfa Romeo has got on with Hope's Car Olympics, and I will say the most challenging part of that was the navigation. Whether that was just a me thing rather than the system, I'm not going to admit to just yet. In terms of folding down the rear seats, it would have been nice if you could just pull those levers and it automatically goes down, but it wasn't too much hassle, and finding the right radio station using the rotary dial was super duper easy. It's now time to take this baby out on the road, and to do that we've got a special guest joining us. Now he's been using this car as his everyday car for the last 7 months, so he should know a thing or two about what it's like on the road. So presenter James, you've been driving this car a lot longer than I have, so what have you got to tell me about it?
Well, I can probably tell you a lot about the sat-nav because you really seem to struggle in the Hope's Car Olympics section, and I know it's not as good as a BMW or an Audi, as you quite rightfully pointed out, but it's not that hard to set the sat-nav to take you to Buckingham Palace. I mean, what was going on there?
You say that. Think back to way back when you first jumped in this car. Was it easy then? Because there was no magnifying glass to search.
Yeah, okay, I mean, it's not as straightforward as perhaps it could be, but still, what I do like about this car, moving on from the sat-nav, is mainly the way that it drives, because I've done, as you said, 7 months in it, 12,600 miles, and I am still, every time I get in it, I'm still so impressed with the way that this car drives and handles. People think BMWs and Jaguars are good, but honestly, Alfa Romeo's engineers, they've played a blinder. This is fantastic to drive.
So what sets it apart from the likes of a BMW?
First off, the steering. It's nice and sharp, it's quick, it's got a much faster rack, as we'd call it, but it's not too fidgety on motorways, which can be the downside of that. It's also quite light, which is good for obvious reasons. It's got a front engine layout with rear wheel drive, which is great for weight distribution. And just in general, the dampers, these are the passive dampers, so they're fixed. There's no adaptive setting, which you can get only with the Estrema and the Quadrifoglio versions of this car. You can no longer get it on the Veloce. But the dampers, you don't need them to be adaptive. In the passive setting, it's great because you know exactly where you stand. The ride quality is good, but it also means that when you want to have a little bit of fun, so you've got a corner coming up, you can go in. And it handles so well. I mean, honestly, in some sports cars, it doesn't feel as good as this. So this is just fantastic.
I mean, you are going for it now, and as a passenger,
Yeah.
I do feel quite safe.
Yeah.
I will say. Oh, my face might disagree.
Oh, I love it.
It's
honestly.
got power. It's got power. It's got a big roar going on there.
I'm pleased he brought up the power because the engine, 280 horsepower, 2 litre petrol, 4 cylinders. So not the biggest engine in the world, but you know, now in 2022 doesn't need to be. And it's not obviously a patch on what you get in the Quadrifoglio, but
510 horsepower.
exactly 510 horsepower, but 280 horsepower is more than enough. It gives you ample speed. I would like it to sound a little bit better, and I would like the gearbox to be a bit sharper when it's not in dynamic mode, because actually you'll find that this car drives best in all scenarios, basically, when it's in its sportiest mode, because it can be a bit sluggish otherwise.
You mentioned the manual mode there. Interesting.
Yeah.
Because of these very impressive metal gear shift paddles. Tell us about them.
I mean, even in cars that cost twice as much as this and have got twice as much power, you often will find that the gear shift paddles, which are a really big touch point, they're pretty rubbish. They're plasticky, they're cheap. These, yeah, I mean,
I'm going to go for a little feel then.
feel the quality. They are metal, they're really big, really easy to reach them, and the action on them, you know, that click, it's just nice and satisfying. It's such a treat, and I really admire Alfa Romeo for actually including this, because so many times you'll find that the engineers want it and the accountants don't, and the accountants will win the argument. This time they haven't, so we've got some lovely gear shift paddles.
And the buttons, of course, on the wheel, very easy to use.
Yeah,
at the
easy
same
to
time.
use. There's nothing too flash or too fancy on this car, and that is partly because it's actually a few years old now, it's 2016. But all the basics are there and some.
And
So-
it's not cluttered.
No.
Even though it's got all of these jazzy features, okay, 2016, like you mentioned, but it's got everything you need and then some without being overwhelming.
Exactly.
I know you love this car, James, and I know you're sad to give the keys back, but there must be some things, or something that you'd like to see different.
Yeah, so if you've seen my long-term video diary series on the Parker's Cars channel, where I go over this car in detail and we've got episodes for each individual thing I talk about, then you'll already know this. But the wind noise. So from the mirrors, there's more wind noise than I'm convinced there should be, because on the Quadrifoglio, when I had that in for a comparison, there wasn't the same amount of wind noise. So that affects the refinement when you're traveling at speed. So that's a bit of a shame. Also, when you lock and unlock the car, there's a really loud beeping sound, which you can't actually turn off. You can't do it in the menu system, and as far as I know, the dealers are pretty reluctant to do it as well. So that's a bit of a pain if you're getting up early in the morning and you don't want to wake your neighbours up. But yeah, other than that, and I mentioned the gearbox,
They're quite picky things.
they are quite picky things, and yeah, genuinely, it's been fantastic, because people think that Alfa Romeos are unreliable as well, but touch wood, it's going back in a few days, but touch wood, I've not had any issues on that front particularly, apart from a couple of software things.
I was like laughing.
This car should be more of a heart over head purchase, but if it weren't for the fact that the PCP deals aren't quite as competitive as other rivals, but on the used market that can change obviously, but if it weren't for that, then I'd say this car's, you know, it's got everything really that you actually need. Yes, there's bits of tech missing that BMWs and Mercs and Audis will get, but otherwise, for a car that drives brilliantly, looks amazing, and generally just feels a bit special, yeah, I absolutely adore it.
Most important question, James. Scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah.
How cool do you feel in this car?
Oh, I feel $1 million, mate. Like, honestly, I mean, people still look at this car, even now, years after it's come out, which I think speaks volumes. And as I said, and as you can see, it's just fantastic fun to drive. This corner's a bit tricky. You can really get it wrong sometimes.
Can you?
Yeah. Okay, so I've driven this car enough. Do you want to have a quick swap around? And...
Yeah, go on then. I don't know if I'll do the corners quite like you, but I'll give it a good go.
Oh, you should try it. It's great fun.
Once James finally let me have a go, I was impressed with just how agile the Giulia felt compared with any of its rivals. Some may find the quick steering takes a little bit of time to get used to, but once you do, it is extremely good fun to drive. I have to say though, it does feel quite big on the road when you first get in, so the reversing camera and all-round parking sensors are a big help.
So we've seen then, the Alfa Romeo is a pretty nice car. But here's the lowdown on the versions you can go for. Firstly, the cheapest version is called the Sprint model. It costs £41,000 and has a 2-litre petrol engine. I'd also recommend that same model if you are a company car user. If you want some speed and power in your life, then go for the 510 horsepower model called the Quadrifoglio.
The Alfa Romeo Giulia may be a rarer sight on the road than its German rivals, but that doesn't mean it's any less worthy of your hard-earned cash. Yes, other cars offer better onboard tech and a slightly more refined driving experience, but the good looks and fleet-footed handling of the Giulia means it has something that really sets it apart from the rest.
Objectively speaking, BMWs, Audis and Mercedes-Benz offerings will appeal to a broader range of buyers. But that doesn't mean you should discount the Alfa Romeo. It definitely feels more fun to drive and has the edge on exclusivity, which when you're spending over £40,000 on a car, surely has to count for something. If it were my money, this Veloce spec certainly gets my vote, although the regular Sprint model will also be a fine compromise.